Today, I am told my study material is very confusing. Actually, they tell me that I should edit it down so that I don't have so much misunderstanding. They said it should be done maybe like Reader's Digest, modern day versions. I don't know whether it's difficult to understand or how much confusion it is. But let me go back a little bit history here. Right after World War II, when I started to tell people about this thing, I had written a little piece of paper. It wasn't very long. It was just one little sheet, part of a sheet. Well, for about 8 or 10 years, that's just about all I did. But during this time, I passed out a lot of these things. I had hundreds and hundreds of people in the boat, and I was yakking my head off. Now, in all this period, as far as I can remember, there was only one person who really got the message from this one little sheet. So I decided to expand it just a little bit more detail. So I wrote another little booklet that I put a bunch of drawings in, and expanded some of trying to explain this thing a little more in detail. This didn't seem to help too much. It probably helped a little bit, but really I really wasn't getting through. So then I prepared something a little bit more detailed, which was a spoon plugging lesson. And in this, I went through about everything, drew pictures, and gave the whole little story on expansion. This helped some, probably. Then later, I wrote a basic book. I felt that I must get all the basics in here as quickly as possible, but be sure that I got all the basics in. This helped some, but I still wasn't satisfied as getting the message across. Then I wrote the home study course. I imagine over a period of time I did make a little progress, but today I am still being told from all directions that my material is complicated. It's too much of it. It's confusion, and that it's difficult to understand. I was giving a lot of thought to this, but I've come to the conclusion, I asked myself, why is this so confusing? So I've come down to several little items here. One is the fact that I'm not a trained writer. I never did consider myself a writer. But then as I thought more, that there's other things maybe that might be involved here. And I came down to this, that the average fisherman today is bombarded from all sides with things that are completely different from what I've been preaching. And so I'm a small voice in the wilderness compared to the other voices that are out there that are more powerful. And especially, the people have a tendency to like being told maybe shortcut success. Another thing that probably the most important conclusion that I came to why my material is confusing or it isn't clear, it's difficult to understand, was the fact that most fishermen live in a very small fishing world. They seem to think that the whole fishing thing rotates around their particular area or their particular fishing. Maybe some of the things that they think are facts could be laughed at in other areas. You've heard me say that to go fishing and then go home and see if you missed something. And most likely you will, because I have this come to me all the time. Then now you also heard me say, fish as many different lakes, as many different fishing situations, as many different weather conditions as you can. And in the process, maybe this thing will clear up just a little bit. So when you analyze it, you may be living in a very small fishing world. Now, when I prepared spoon plugging, I prepared it, and my things that I would put down was for me, because I expected to fish in many areas, in many different fishing situations. I didn't want to be tied to one place. So when I put this down, I had to put it down for every type of fishing situation that a guy could probably run into. I wasn't going to say one thing in one area that might confuse a guy in another area. I had to put the facts of what made a fish tick and what you and I must do to catch him. And I couldn't take an isolated area and do this. So this may be partly why it's confusing, that it's too broad for his fishing world. That's all I'm going to say except this. Your basic guideline that you've been passed out, and I've been putting it before you quite often, is just like that first sheet that I wrote right after World War II. So I'm going back to the basic. I'm going back to the basic guideline tonight, and we're going to see if we can't clear this thing up. So with that thought in mind, we're going to get into our program. We're going to start our discussion with the Blue Pucker's basic guideline, which says, the home of the fish where he spends the greater part of his time, a sanctuary from a changing or hostile environment, is somewhere in the deep or deepest water in the area being fished. When in the sanctuary depths, the fish are normally so dormant and or so deep they are almost impossible to locate or catch. As fishermen, we are saved due to the fact that fish do not stay so dormant or so deep all the time. Once or twice on the average fishing day, they will become active and may move towards shallow water. We're saved again because when the fish become active and move towards shallower water, they do not go in just any direction. The route they take has bottom features, structure breaks, and break lines that show them the way. As the fish move along a bottom feature, structure, they will pause or stop at things, breaks and break lines on the bottom. How far they go along a migration route toward shallows and how long they stay at a break or break line before turning back to deep water is dependent upon, controlled by, the weather and water conditions at that particular time. It's at this point that we're going to try to set up or follow through on the theme that we have done all week. And this is the last paragraph that you see there, which says, if you and I desire to consistently catch fish whenever or wherever we go fishing, we must control the depth and speed of our lures or bait on and or around the bottom features, structure, breaks, break lines the fish are using in their movements and migrations. Let me say that again so that we get the picture. If you and I desire to consistently catch fish whenever or wherever we go fishing, we must control the depth and speed of our lures or bait on and or around the bottom features, structure, breaks, break line the fish are using in their movement and migration. That's the whole ball of wax. That's how simple fish is. I didn't say anything else. I didn't talk about weather. I didn't talk about water. I didn't talk about whether the fish felt good or anything. That is the story of successful fishing whenever or wherever you and I go fishing. In the past, when I went into an area to do some promotional fishing, I tried to find the lake close to the city that had the worst reputation. In other words, a lake considered by the locals is to be fished out, or it had a bad water condition, or it hadn't had any reproduction. I couldn't get any attention by going into a wilderness area and do my fishing, such as most of us we see on TV with the heroes in some wilderness area where all the action took place. So the scenes that we're going to see, look at, occurred in bodies of water whose reputation was pretty bad. All that we did in these scenes was control the depth and speed of lures on and around the bottom features the fish were using in their movement and migration. That's all we did. We didn't do anything else. There wasn't anything else that we could do. It didn't make any difference about the weather or the water, those things. I didn't even care whether the fish felt good or bad, because there wasn't much we could do about it. We're going to control all those features by using the features of the lake that the fish used in their movements and migration, and we were going to control the depth and speed of our lures. I want you to think about this. That's what fishing is all about. That's what you and I will do, regardless where we go. This is a lake in Indiana that a bunch of us enjoy fishing. We do our fun fishing here. When we want to get some pictures of something, we'll come down to fish this lake. In this case, Terry O'Malley and myself and Don and Marge Nichols, we went down to do a little fishing in this particular lake. And what I want you to note in this is the trolling to locate the fish and then the casting position. Also, I want you to note the different sizes or age groups that are in the lake. While this is going on, let me give a little background here. We had a lake in southern Wisconsin. Is one of the finest big northern lakes I ever saw. It had other fish in it, but when we wanted to do some fun fishing or we wanted to get some pictures of some big northern, we'd go up there and just go ahead and get them because the fish were there. Now, shortly after that, they'd pulled this particular lake down. They drained it and poisoned it out because the fishing was so bad. Now, we had another lake in Wisconsin that we considered one of our best bass lakes. We had it so pinpointed, there's one deep hole, and that we didn't usually have to troll. We just go up, make our boat, and just start casting, and it had some of the biggest bass in Wisconsin. Big, nice fish. So it wasn't long that the state pulled this lake down and to clean it out and to start over. Now, We also heard, as you'll see just a little bit later, that after this, that they were going to do the same thing to a lake up in kind of northern Wisconsin, one of our favorite lakes. We heard that they were going to pull it down. So just a little bit later, when we're finished here, we're going to go to that particular lake and take a few shots. Now, I also heard, while I'm talking about pulling lakes down and starting over, so to speak, that one of our favorite lakes down in Florida, I understand are going to lower it, the lake, pull it way down for weed control. But let me go back a little bit. For a few years ago, the state pulled this same lake down. I never did hear why they pulled it down. But what happened when they did pull it down, the so-called professional fishermen flocked in from all over the country, and it was just like vultures on a dead horse. And the only way I can explain it is that they raped the potholes that were left after they pulled the lake down. Now, you can draw your own conclusions as to why the lake is going to be lowered again. I want you to note this, that these are very nice fish. There was a lot of them in this lake. We had fished this lake quite a lot, and it produced a lot of good fish, a lot of good fun fishing. That's what we were doing. Just a short while after we made this trip to this lake to fishing, guess what happened? This lake was pulled down and poisoned out because the fishing was so bad. This is the lake that we heard they were going to pull it down and recreate a fishing hole, so to speak. So I got the boys together and I said, let's go up here and see if we can stop this operation. We'll take the film along. So this is a narrow view, and I'm showing two deeper sections. One is behind that little island, and this is the other deep hole. These are the two areas that contain the fish in this lake. It has some walleyes in it, but we were using this as a fun fishing lake for bass and northern. The one behind the hole behind the island, so to speak, there, that smaller, deeper section, had a lot of bass in it. It had some northern, but the bigger hole on the outside seemed to have more. But we fished the whole thing. It was bass and northern in both sections. But in this, I'm cutting this down pretty red. Now, we were planning on fishing it. I told Carl Moss, the managing editor of Fishing Facts, to come up, and he'd be in the boat with me, and then Terry O'Malley and his friend Big Boy would be in the other boat. But Carl was late getting there. So I said, fellas, let's go on out on the lake and do a little checking until Carl gets here. We'll keep our eyes on the dock and see if he, so we know when he comes. So we'll go out And let's find out what makes this thing tick. We know that the fish, you saw the animations, we know this is what's going to take place, that the fish are using them, the structure situations are there in their movements and migration. So what we have to find out is the structure situations and see if there are any fish on the move. So we're going to use our spoon plugs to do it, and we're going to start out by trolling. This is going to tell us where, when, and how, and what, and everything else, and it certainly will tell us where, and when, and what to cast. We're going to use just regular spoon plugs to strain the water. We know that probably the 100 lure was taken off, so Terry is, so we're going to work on this thing to see if the fish are moving and see what the structure situation is. There's parts of the bottom is dirty and part of it is clean. But we're going to find out what the condition is at this particular time. We have worked out with quite a lot of weeds, and so we're outside the weed line right now. And Terry, we're feeling the bottom. He's down around 10 feet to 11 feet, and he's finding it's fairly dirty. He seemed to think he's pretty well. He knows how much line he's running, and I think he's running a 200, so he's down around 10, 11 feet. He's right at where it's starting to clean up. And also you're going to see the bars. There's the lure hitting the bar. He's got some dirt down. He's got some trash downstairs, but he's pretty well got it. What the condition and how deep and where the clean bottoms are. And of course in the trolling patterns, he's going to find the bars. He's going to find the structure situation that's there. So he's telling me that it seemed like right around 11 feet the thing cleans up. So he's going to use his depth sounder now as an aid. He knows about where the bars, and he's going to throw his markers on the area so he gives us good control so we don't mess around. We're putting that tool out for quite a distance, and we're going to put down quite a few. And when we saw about where the bars were, so we're going to throw some markers outside that clean area, so that out of the dirty area, so we can make our trolling passes right. So if we see any fish are on the move. This gives you a pretty good picture of a typical structure situation in this lake, or that we're going to troll. So this is our trolling pass. And while we're making the trolling pass, we're going to look at the shoreline and keep in position too. So we're going to look way off in the distance, and it looks like there's a church or a barn or something over there, and we relate that to that point to the right there. We're getting some shoreline sightings across there. Markers or no markers. You and I at all times want to have some shoreline sightings. So we're getting a pretty good picture of what's there. Our lure is bumping the bottom, and it's running free. It's telling us where those bars or those fingers in the bottom are. And we want our lure to bump those as we go across those clean fingers. And we'll make a turn or another pass. We'll go back, because in this particular area, the one pass wasn't enough. We got to get a little better story. So we're going to make probably several passes here. Now when you eat, I want you to watch the rod tip. It's bumping the clean finger, and it looked like it went out of sight, so it must have Yeah, you hit a fish. He made another, I told him he better make another trolling pass to pinpoint that thing. Because I had to take time to change the film in the camera. So I told him to go ahead and make another pass, and I'll probably have my camera loaded. Well, the time I got it loaded, the boys had another bass on, but I loaded it and got a little of the action right here. It really didn't make too much difference because all I wanted to do here was to show whether the fish were moving and that there was plenty here. The big boy was a little eager beaver. He had never been in a school of big bass like that, and so he also found out that this fish, the bass, had taken a great big fish and he'd been digesting it in pieces. He certainly was hungry, but the way we were presenting the lure and the depth and feed control, we got the strike that we were after. He certainly wasn't hungry, so we made him strike. The boy was a little premature in the casting position before Terry even got the anchor down, so he sort of messed it up. Time Terry got the anchor down, he had lost 2 or 3 fish, and well, what it boiled down to, I said, fellas, let's get out of here. We know where they are, so when Carl comes, we could probably come back here and locate these fish. So I said, let's get out of here. You do not get in a hurry. You got to get the anchor in position so that when you make the cast, you'll be right on the money. You can't mess around when you go to the cast. You'll get some small fish, and most likely you're going to lose some, which the big boy did. And of course, that's when I said, well, they're spooked, let's go. Let's go after some, see if we can't run into some northern. And besides, we got to go around that corner there and see if Carl's come. Well, we didn't see Carl at the dock, so we just said, well, let's do a little see if we can locate the northern, and we'll work this bigger hole a little bit. I don't know whether you've noticed it, but the watercolor is a little white sandy. Very good. It looks like it's a little clearer here, but it's more in sandy rather than the yellow green. Now, we have you can have a little guideline. These northern may scatter just a little bit. There's not a real good migration, but we may have some smaller northern coming up on the end of the bars, or you could have some big northern move up. But there could be a little scattering, but they're still working on the same migration route. A lot of times the northern, you got to get a good bump on the clean airs, and then the northern has to have a straight shot at that lure rather than a bass. A bass can turn on a dime, but a northern has to have a real straight shot. He can't butt his head against the wall. He takes it so fast that he just can't stop on a dime. So most likely when we're bumping across the bar, the fish will take it just as it came off. I often say, you put him in the net, now you get him out. Those not familiar with northern have very big, sharp teeth, just look kind of like a walleye, only bigger. A lot of people frown on catching northern, but I really enjoy catching them. One of the kids, the men who were on the dock, was out on the lake. They heard we was out there fishing, so they were out trying to catch a fish. We noticed them stop way up on the flat, way up, away from the break line. So we went over to help them out. They were so far out of position that they were actually getting the small fish in the shallows. It reminds me of a lot of small fish I see being caught, bass being caught over the country, and where they're being caught. This Paul Purak, he's one of Terry O'Malley's fishing partner. He taught him. Terry taught this boy how to go, and of course he know how to run the brake lines and the bars, and I reckon he learned not to put the big northern like that in the net. But what else can you do unless you have a gaff? Well, we saw the northern were doing okay, but I said, let's go in, and I'll wait. You boys go ahead and go fishing, and I'll wait for Carl to come, and as soon as he comes, we'll come on out and meet you, because it looked like it's going to rain, and you fellas go on out and get some fishing. I don't remember how long this film was, but I cut it down quite a lot. Well, it looks like good fishing weather coming up. After a while, Carl came and we went on out, and we saw Terry and Big Boy still working the humps in the big area, and the bars that came out. They were actually not humps, but they were bars that extended out big fingers. So they were going across, bumping the finger, and then they come off and bingo. Here's Carl. A lot of you know Carl Moss. He's an old spoon flugger. He's trying to feel the bar. He'll get it in a minute. He's getting closer and closer. I made him run the boat. I was going to take his picture. In the meantime, the boys are still over on having some fun. Takes a brave man to do that with those big teeth. Carl, in the meantime, Carl and I are over working on one of the bars, one of the fingers. We're working in the general area, same area, and finally he got on the money and he got a big fish on. Now, the reason you didn't see that fight is because I wanted that fish in the boat. I laid the camera down and I got a great big net. And I wanted this fish in the boat. So I put him in the boat, put him in the bottom of the boat, and we went over and asked the boys how they were doing. So they were talking to Carl, talking about all these fish they've been catching. And so I said, Carl, shake yours at him, boy. I might add that we showed this particular film. It had a lot more action in it around, and at the present, so the pulling down of this lake was delayed. We put it on some local TV and showed it around some clubs and kind of stopped this lake. But I've heard that later on they are still figuring maybe to pull this lake down due to the bad fishing. This is the tool that you just saw that I don't mention very much was the camera. This is a very important part. Then we're going to another lake up in kind of in north central Michigan. We've been working in Detroit, and I figured we better go up close to a pretty good sized city upstate, so we got up around pretty close to Grand Rapids. And of course, you know how I select my lakes when I go fishing. I'm going to get one that doesn't have too good a reputation. Of course, I help myself by finding a map, a contour map, so I'm marking a sharper break on one of the deeper holes. So this gave us a pretty good picture of what's out there. But we're going to, Terry O'Malley, myself, and Bud, my former fishing partner, we're going to troll to locate, see the structure, see what it's like. It's talking to us. And this is our teacher. We're trolling. So we're going to find out what the features are of this lake and what makes it tick. We'll have to make a couple trolling passes to be we're located where they are before we drop our anchors and go to the cast. You'll see the anchors are down, and we've been on the cast ever since that second fish we hit on the troll. Some of you may wonder why we're showing this. I think some of the spoon pluggers in the audience can recognize the features and the lake and the situation. This is a good shot. Yeah, I'd like to get them too. Just heading down south. This is way up north in Michigan. You might look on some of the displays of fishing in the country, and you'll see one Detroit on the top that's hanging on around here somewhere, and you'll see a little article about this particular fishing trip. We found other fish in this, and this is the one day that we happened to have a fellow that could run the camera. We're going to continue the same thought that we've been looking at, a different scene. But before I get into this scene, let me give you a little background. I was doing some work for the city of Jacksonville, Florida, when big headlines in a newspaper came out where the Game and Fish Commission had done some study on a lake and farther down the state in Florida. What it amounted to was the fact that their study said that there is no longer any bass in this lake, that it had become so polluted that only garfish and some mudfish were still in the lake. This was brought about, according to the report, of the influx of the building of houses and the sewage, raw sewage going into the lake, and that they'd built some citrus processing plants around the lake, and had filled and was putting all the garbage in the lake. At the same time, they had started some muck farms in part of the lake. They were digging up the thick layer of muck in the lake and drying it out, and this was the peat or moss that we spread around our flowers. What this had done, it put the lake in very bad shape as far as water conditions concerned. So I told two of the fellows that was working with me in the Jacksonville area, I said, you fellows go down and check this lake out and see what the study is and see if there is a bass in the lake. I said, I'll be down in about 2 or 3 days, and I'll probably bring some people with me to record what we find out. So in about 3 days after that, I took a newspaper writer and also a fellow that worked some of the TV stuff, and we went down to this particular lake. When I got there, I couldn't find my boys. Well, it took me a little while, but just close by, I found them fishing another lake. My reaction was this, that fellas, I didn't send you down here to fish this lake. I sent you down here to check that other lake and see if there's a bass in that. And they said, oh, we fished it. We fished it for about a day and a half, and that thing is so full of orange juice and fibers from this muck farming that we just couldn't hardly get our lure in water. It would pile up on the line. It was a terrible situation, and we didn't get a fish. So I told the fellows, I said, well, we're going to go over and maybe I can teach you, not only you guys a lesson, but maybe we can find out if there's a bass in the lake. So we went over to the lake, and the scenes that you're going to see is what we found out. When we got to the dock area, we had a little problem trying to find a place where to launch the boat, because there were about 5 docks there, but they had closed down. But we finally got the boats in the water. And then looking at the water, I saw that it really did look like orange juice, and there was a whole lots of stringy type cellulose swimming around in the water too, and so I knew that we was going to have trouble. I knew where the structure was. I knew where the best structure was, but I didn't know where, at what depth or what the condition of the water was. I did know that the bottom was covered with muck, and I knew that there was weeds in the lake, and I didn't know what depth is going to be. And in fact, I didn't even know the condition, what the speed would be. So I had I anticipated this, so I brought my tackle box that had all types of tools that I had built. Some that I could work the surface, some I could work the different depths, like your regular spoon plugs. Then I made some other jig type things that I was able to would be able to work the bottom, work back in the weeds, or whatever is necessary. So I came prepared for this thing, so that I could control my depth and speed regardless where I was working. Didn't make any difference to me. So what I was going to do is either check the fish are either in the shallows, the deep, or somewhere between. And the condition of that, I had to find out. So we're going to start trolling. This is Terry. He's letting out line. What we're doing, we're in the area where I remember there was some good structure. I didn't know exactly, but I did know that the best structure that I had found years ago was in this particular area. So we're going to check it out. And we're going to run around here all over and check the depth, see what the condition of the bottom is. Because our job was to see if we could find a bass in the lake. Terry was very good at changing lures, and you'll notice our tackle box, we had them out there where we could get to them, because we didn't know how many it's going to take. And we was working fairly fast because we had some so-called dignitaries with us. We had the outdoor writer at a large paper, and then we had a fellow that had doing some TV shows. So I'm filming most of this. I'm filming most all of it. A little later on, I got in on the action, and I put the camera down, and I caught some fish. But maybe I shouldn't have said that, because in the beginning, our job was to check this thing out, our depth and the structure, condition of the bottom, and see if we couldn't locate the fish. It was running a little bit too deep, so Terry's going to work a little bit different water, but he's going to have to retrace himself just a little bit here to check that out. He can't pass up that depth that we were working. Just the fact that the muck was giving him trouble, so we're going to have to use line length and lure size to run just above it. If we were casting, we never would have found the area, which is true in most any lake or thing, because fish are just not everywhere, as you know. We're going to feel, Terry's going to feel it, and he's going to let out enough line and so on, so he's just barely above that bottom. Now you saw exactly what happened. Now we didn't know whether it was a mudfish or a garfish or what, but there was something there. And let's see, a bass. It wasn't the biggest bass in the world, but that was, that was very encouraging, because not only was the bass here, but we're getting some reproduction. There was a little fella. So that means if there's a little fella in there, it ought to be some big ones in there, around there too. And since it was kind of fished out, had bad reputation and all that stuff, we probably, if we found the bigger fish, there'd be a concentration. In other words, probably maybe the last group in the lake, I don't know. This isn't the first time that I've worked lakes where I only found the one group in a bad fishing situation. But when I found it this way, I found also that I had a lot of streaks. That is, quite a lot of large fish. We pretty well got the area. Now we're going to do a lot of fan casting here with different lures to see if we can pinpoint the area. And it gives us a chance to check the depth, our speeds, and also checking our condition of the bottom and everything. We're feeling it out. We know that there should be some fish in this area because this is the area that I had found some fish before. It wasn't a pronounced structure situation on the bottom, but it was definitely a condition there that was different from the whole area. This was particular. You can see we even got red worms in that muck. This lure, this big lure, was working under the muck, picking up some of it, and I see some red worms up on the line. They had been running on the muck. Well, it looks like in our checking, it looks like we're just going to have to go get work right down next to the bottom, and we're going to have to use a lure or something that we can work down there and get a little speed control, a little action down there, but still would be able to work on the muck. If it wouldn't go into the muck, but would be able to work it right along, just barely skimming the muck. And this is a spoon plug that I made years ago for this purpose, so that we get downstairs. And by having the tail in the air, I could work it right on the bottom, but the fish could still get to the hook. So Terry's fixing him up a whole bunch of different slow-working lures down that he could work downstairs. We found out that we also could cast the real small lures and keep them above it. Not the smallest lures, but we could keep the regular standard spoon plugs too. Because after a while we found out the way the fish were taken and just about what depth. Now Vic Saunders, he was over there trying to reach, and pretty soon Vic, I held this telescopic, pretty soon Vic says, hey, we're getting close. I got one. He's anchored a little bit out of position, and it wasn't about that time that Terry could reach it, and he had one. But he didn't keep it very long. He threw it. Vic is in something else. There again, Vic is a little bit out of position. He just can't hardly reach the spot. But we know we're close. He did the same thing Terry just did. But this was all right. These fish are fairly active, so we should stay with them. You'll see that this is a bad water condition that these fish were really sick. They just about died. They were so, the conditions were so bad. We kind of kept Vic out of the way because we was afraid if he had to move very much, it was pretty close to where Terry was, and I might say I got into him too. But it really, I kept telling the boys, I said, make him jump, make him jump. We don't, we, so we had to keep him moving. I think Nick's got one on. Now, it looked like the line here. Terry's got one on too. If you see this jumping, that's because I was laughing. I had it on telescopic, and I was laughing at Vic over there because he had couldn't reach it, but it proved the point that there was some grinnell and some mudfish still in here. He's out of position, but Terry was still in them. Yours truly got into these fish too. Terry shot a few pictures, but I cut this film down to about 14 minutes so that we wouldn't bore people with this type of action. And these are nice fish. Here's Dick. He moved his boat, but he moved it kind of away and put it in another position, because he was hoping that he'd get into the fish that Terry was catching, but he was having his problems. He couldn't quite reach it, the spot. He was kind of up on the shallower muck, and there again, it's most likely this is where the state made their test, up in that shallow water, and probably they too couldn't find any bass to speak of. So they just assumed that it was full of grinnell or mudfish and garfish. Kind of like we reach all over the country. And one of the reasons that I fished, the lake's so-called fished out. Now this is the outdoor rider from Jacksonville. He got in on it. There, Vic is sitting back in the corner back there with the other man from the TV station. We had a real ball, but you usually have to have some local dignitaries, like outdoor riders and things along, because if you don't have these people along when you're doing this, they will usually say, well, he didn't catch the fish there, he caught them somewhere else and pulled them in here and made believe that he caught them out of here. I didn't ever want to do that. Now, I kept telling the rider to Camel, kept telling, make him jump, make him jump, I want to see him jump. And so he pulled him around, the fish are going the other way. And this is the biggest fish he had on. It looked like to me he'd go around 12 pounds or better. It was the biggest fish that any of us had on. And I tell him to make him jump. Sometimes he didn't have to hold his rod high and try to make him hold and make him jump. They just jumped on their own. I had them take, as I said, I had to take some additional pictures because I won't get in it, but I cut this down to about 14 minutes, I believe, so that we'd have time to talk a little more about some situations. You'll notice that the difference between my boys and these are the way that they will put the fish in the boat. Sometimes if you don't have a net, you got to do this. But I tell my fellows, get the net, and don't take a chance. So when we got back to the dock, there's 5 of these that somebody had told them that Buck Perry or some of the boys out here fishing. So the former dock owners met us over at where we had launched the boat. And that's what you see in the background here. These were former resort or dock owners that heard we were there. This is the fishing partner. I didn't put him into the action because he is in another boat. I only had the one camera, so. Now as you look at this, you begin to realize probably why this lake was no good. Because they didn't know our guidelines. They didn't know that the simple truth was we control the depth and speed of our lures or bait on and around the features that the fish are using in their movements. That's how simple it was. There was no magic lure, there was no magic anything. The knowledge was involved in the control of depth and speed and being able to locate where the fish were. Now you will see them moving these fish around. The reason I keep at them and have them paw at them, because these fish, a lot of them hadn't kicked the bucket yet. There, you see them kicking. I said, I want these fish to kick. And I said, we try to get some of these big fish, some of these fish up to 9 to 9.5, and 1 or 2 is the 10-pounders. They may not look it, but they're huge fish. All these are big fish. These, you can see the coloration in these. They look like they've been in orange juice, don't they? Some of them are pretty good color. You'll have to pardon this film pictures all the way through, because it's about a 3rd generation copy of a half-inch tape from a film. Film's pretty good. I tell these boys at this stage, I said, let me get in the action, because I caught some of these fish. And we have to, because the limits and the fish we kept included mine too. There, the old boy got in the picture. You probably noted that these were fresh fish. None of them spoiled, nor were they destroyed. The larger fish were mounted, and the smaller fish were eaten. I believe that most of these fish would have died of old age, or due to the condition of the water, or due to the fact that a spoon plugger never fished this lake again. I do want to leave this thought with you, and I want to call it food for thought. I want to show you a little animation, and I want you to be thinking about this after you view these films. Here we have a lake that has a big weed line, has a tall weed line, and we're going to look at this particular point there And we're going to show you the average guy that probably will go into the lake and control the depth and speed of his lure on this structure, because this is a weed line coming out, so there's a bar there. And so we're going to look at mostly what will occur. Here he's running contours. His boat's in good position. His lure went into the weeds. He doesn't miss much time. He goes back and gets his lure, and then he takes off. Now let's look at another point, or the same one, or we could be looking at the one up there, same type of a situation with a bar that's running out underneath the water. The first thing that a spoon plugger would do would be to be sure that he has his sights right. And so he would come up and probably mark the situation in such a way that he'd know exactly what it was all about before he made his passage. Now the bar, this is a tall weed line, so the structure of the bar is below that weed line with a break line into the deep water. This is the situation here. So we'll just assume that there's a school of fish or something somewhere in that area of that break line. So the spoon plugger, he's going to be working below the weed line. He's already checked his shallows and he's worked the face of the weed line, just like probably the other guy did. But anyway, he's working a deeper section. You've heard us say that when you get mapping and interpretation below in the deeper water, you must keep your passes straight. So his lure is bumping across the bar. He's reading the structure. His trolling passes are telling him what's here. And so pretty soon, he's pretty well got the shape of that thing by looking at it. His lure is telling him about where the contact point is. So he probably did glance at his depth sounder, but the looking depth sounder didn't show him the shape of it. But his lure did, his spoon plug did, because it's a mapping interpretation tool. It's built that way. So this is what he saw. So we'll place the fish. He knows it, that if there's a fish coming to this bar, the contact point's going to be right there. He found that out on his trolling passes, that this would probably be the contact point. Now you can draw your own conclusion whether who was controlling the depth and speed of his lures on the features that the fish were using in their movements and migrations. It's just as simple as that.